Hey guys. Tonight we slip into the quiet rhythm of a grandmother's day on a rooftop in Gaza during a summer when the sky never really sleeps. You're seated cross-legged on a faded cushion, its edges unraveling just enough to feel familiar. The breeze is slight, barely tugging at the hem of your long cotton dress. The city below is still, or maybe it's just pretending. In Gaza, silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it just means the noise is still deciding where to land. The sky above you is pale, not yet fully blue, like it hasn't made up its mind whether to shine or warn. The tea in your chipped glass cup is strong and sweet, the kind that sticks to your teeth and wakes up every part of your chest. You sip slowly, staring at the clothesline fluttering just beyond the parapet. A white undershirt, a dish towel, a dress you haven't worn in years washed just in case. A bird crosses overhead, a lone one, not the kind you can name. Not one of the little sparrows that used to dance through your father's orange grove. This one moves faster, straighter, with intent. You follow it with your eyes, trying not to blink. Mainstream historical fact. During the 2014 Gaza conflict, drone surveillance and airstrikes became a near-constant feature of life. For civilians, especially elders, watching the sky was both a habit and a necessary skill, reading clouds for danger the way others check weather apps. You take another sip. The tea's cooled just enough to taste the mint you added at the last moment. One sprig half-wilted pinched from the pot near the broken stair. It's a luxury now, like sugar, like stillness. Quirky tidbit. Some Gazan grandmothers swear tea doesn't taste right unless it's made in a dented aluminum kettle with exactly 7 mint leaves. Not 6, not 8. 7 like the days of the week or the lives of cats. You glance behind you. She's still asleep. Your granddaughter legs sprawled, one arm draped over a stuffed toy, missing an ear. Her breathing is light, too light for your liking. She's dreaming. You hope it's of something soft, something not here. You shift your weight. The rooftop's cement is still warm from yesterday's heat, the kind of warmth that seeps into bones like a slow exhale. Your knees pop when you move, not loud, but enough to remind you they've carried generations. Historians still argue whether elders in conflict zones hold on for the sake of wisdom or stubbornness. Whether the rooftop rituals, tea prayer, sky watching are acts of resistance or simply survival dressed up in routine. You think they can be both. The sun inches upward. Not quite glaring yet, but enough to squint. You turn your face away and reach for the plastic radio you keep by the steps. Static. Then a voice, too loud. You lower the volume and rest your hand on the antenna. It's bent, like everything else. A reporter mutters something about ceasefires and breakdowns and foreign ministers expressing concern. You listen with one ear. The other is tuned to the wind. The wind, after all, knows more than the news. Below you a rooster crows. Late. He's always been late. You smile at the absurdity of a rooster with no sense of timing. Your husband used to joke that the bird was waiting for permission, that even roosters in Gaza had to wait for clearance. You miss his jokes. You sip again. The cup is half empty now, and you savor each gulp like a prayer. Not the formal kind, the real kind, the kind you whisper with your teeth clenched and your eyes on the sky. You shift again, careful not to wake the child. The breeze changes, just slightly, carrying the scent of something you can't place, dust and laundry soap and the first hint of heat. It's going to be another long day. You close your eyes just for a second, listening to the hum of power lines and the whisper of the wind. Somewhere a far-off engine hums. You know better than to look for it. If it's close, you'll feel it before you see it. But for now, the rooftop holds. The tea holds. The morning impossibly holds. The water tanks are the first thing you check. They're black, squat, and always look heavier than they are. 2 sit like sentinels near the edge of the rooftop, catching whatever they can from the last night's trickle of municipal water. You tap one with your knuckle, hollow. The other, half full maybe. That means 4 buckets. Maybe 5 if you reuse the rinse water for the toilet. You don't sigh. You've already sighed for this same problem too many times. Instead, you just pick up the bucket by the handle. The plastic is cracked near the top, and you hold it tilted so the crack doesn't split. Small, learned choreography. Your granddaughter is still dozing. Her toes curl slightly under the hem of the blanket you draped over her after the wind picked up. You brush her hair from her face without waking her. She's always hot when she sleeps. A little furnace of dreams and twitchy legs. You remember your own daughter being the same. Down the stairs now. Slow. Each step carries the memory of a younger knee, a different weight, a different worry. But you're here now, bucket in hand, counting steps by feel. 12. You've always counted steps. Ever since the bombing that took out the stairs in your cousin's house when you were a girl. You count. Not because you expect collapse, but in case it comes. The kitchen is dim. The power is out again, of course. You don't bother checking the switch. You reach instead for the little solar lantern left charging by the windowsill. It's dim, but enough. You set it on the counter and rest the bucket in the sink, staring at the faucet like you can will it to give you good news. A groan, a sputter, then drip, a slow one. You hold your breath, waiting for rhythm, but no, just that stingy drip. Stingy. You set the bucket down and place a bowl under the faucet instead. It'll fill in time. It always does. Time is the only thing you have more of than water. Mainstream historical fact. During the summer of 2014, access to clean water in Gaza dropped drastically. Infrastructure damage, fuel shortages, and border restrictions left many households reliant on rooftop tanks, rain catchment, and inconsistent water deliveries. Residents often used only 20-30 liters per person per day, well below the global emergency minimum. Back upstairs, you pour the last of yesterday's stored water into a second basin. It's murky. Reused rinse. You dip a cloth in and begin wiping the table beside your granddaughter, careful not to splash her. Clean isn't always sanitary, but it helps you feel less helpless. Outside, the sun pushes harder now. You walk to the line of clothes still damp from last night's wash. A bra hangs limp, a pair of pants pinned by one leg. The dish towel you embroidered back in 1986. The thread has faded, but the little flowers still try their best. You lift each piece gently, letting the fabric speak to you. Damp, cool, not ready. You pull your scarf tighter around your shoulders and glance at the sky. It's paler than before, washed out, or maybe your eyes are just tired of looking. A low thump sounds in the distance. You pause. Wait. Nothing follows. Just the regular morning sounds. Footsteps in the alley, a goat bleating, two boys shouting over who saw what first. You pretend you didn't flinch. Quirky tidbit. Some Gaza rooftops double as gardens with tomato vines growing from broken buckets and mint sprouting from rusted teapots. Your garden didn't survive the last shelling, but you still water the dirt where it used to be. Maybe one day. You check the far tank again, still not rising. Back downstairs, you re-wet the cloth and try not to grumble when it drips on your slippers. You pass the mirror near the door. It's cracked, split into 3 long rivulets like a dry wadi. You catch your reflection, or part of it, enough to see your eyebrows need attention, but the pencil's gone dull and there's no sharpener. Historians still argue whether maintaining small routines, grooming laundry, watering dust is an act of resistance or merely an echo of normalcy. You don't care what they argue. You do these things because they are yours, because if you don't, the sky wins. You turn the radio dial. The voice now speaks faster, the same words said over and over, updates, warnings, maybe reassurances. You filter the words through years of practiced listening. If they say 5 deaths, it's probably more. If they say temporary pause, it means nothing changed. You pour the basin water into another bucket, 4 liters. Maybe 5. You note it without writing it down. Your mind is sharper than your pencil anyway. From the roof you hear movement. She's awake. You smile before you even reach the stairs. She's sitting up now, rubbing her eyes, her blanket pooled at her waist. Her hair is wild with sleep, her face puffy and pink with dreams. You hand her a cup of tea, not hot but sweet. She takes it in both hands and drinks without speaking. She learned that from you. No one speaks before the second sip. She finishes her tea and hands you the cup with both hands. You take it wordlessly, pressing your fingers to the still warm rim before setting it aside. Some days, this is your entire conversation for the morning. But it's a conversation nonetheless. She walks barefoot to the edge of the rooftop, peeking through the rusted metal railing. You follow her gaze. Below, the street is already gathering its slow, determined chaos men in long shirts rolling metal shutters up carts wobbling over cracked pavement. The old woman 2 buildings down watering the patch of soil in front of her doorway where something green insists on growing. Your granddaughter hums to herself, a tune you don't recognize. You ask her where she heard it. She shrugs. In a dream, maybe, she says. You nod. That makes sense. Dreams in Gaza are often more musical than mornings. You take the bucket of water from the corner and carry it toward the makeshift sink. This one's for rinsing dishes, 2 bowls, 1 spoon, and a cracked plate with a painted blue edge. You saved that plate from your wedding set. Only 3 remain. 1 is buried somewhere beneath rubble. 1 is chipped beyond recognition. This one still sings when you touch it. As you wash, your granddaughter begins drawing shapes on the concrete with her finger dipped in leftover tea. She draws a crescent moon, then a house, then a bird with huge wings. Why is the bird so big, you ask? So it can carry us away, she replies without looking up. Your hands pause in the water, then resume. The sky above hums slightly again, that low, vibrating presence. You glance up automatically, but it's higher today, farther off. You pretend not to hear it. Can I play with the neighbor's cat later, she asks. We'll see, you say, which means no, but it's the kind of no that leaves room for yes if the day is kind. Quieter now, you both sit. The morning is stretching on. Another day in the rooftop ballet of rationing and pretending, where every sip is a decision and every silence is filled with watching. The midday sun pushes down like a hand you can't quite shake off. You move slowly now, each task stretched out into something almost ceremonial. The laundry is halfway dry. The dishes are clean, even if rinsed in yesterday's water. You've tidied the bedding, swept the corners, and now you sit with your knees folded to the side on an old straw mat, the weave poking faintly through your cotton dress. Your granddaughter plays quietly beside you, stacking bottle caps and broken clothespins into a fortress. She narrates softly to herself, creating a world where nothing falls, where birds don't spy, and where the cat next door is always friendly. You smile, but not too wide. Smiles are like sugar measured rare and sweeter when they come unexpectedly. You glance at the time, not from a clock, those haven't worked in months, but from the way the shadows cross the far rooftop, from the drone overhead growing faint then circling again, from the radio which has grown quieter now as if even the broadcasters need a nap. Mainstream historical fact. By midday during the 2014 Gaza conflict, heat and fear often combined to keep many families indoors. Children played silently. Conversations dropped to murmurs. Adults stayed by windows looking out without really watching, waiting for either movement or stillness to tell them which was safer. Your granddaughter pauses in her game and looks up at you. Do we have bread? You nod. There's a small piece wrapped in cloth under the basin, flat and slightly hard. Still good. You hand it to her with a pat on the head. She breaks it in half and offers you a piece. You take it. You chew together in silence, and you think about the way hunger has changed over the years. It used to be a sharp, demanding thing. Now it's patient. It waits its turn. You take a sip of water after the bread, 1 mouthful each. You don't mention how little's left. She doesn't ask. Quirky tidbit. Many families in Gaza have passed down ration recipes, meals created specifically for days without power, fresh produce, or cooking gas. You know at least 7 ways to make a tomato stretch into a dish. Some involve no tomato at all. Your back aches. You shift again, stretch your legs just enough to hear that familiar creak in your hip. There's no doctor to check it. There hasn't been one in the neighborhood for weeks. But pain, like everything else here, becomes familiar, manageable. You learn to carry it, like you carry the kettle gingerly from the base, never too fast. She leans against your shoulder now. Her small frame nestles perfectly into the curve of your arm. Her breath is even not sleepy but calm. It feels like a kind of victory. The breeze returns, lifting the edge of your scarf. You wrap it tighter and squint up at the sky. It's pale again, washed clean by heat and quiet. A stillness you don't trust. Historians still argue whether silence in wartime is a symptom of shell shock or wisdom. Whether it's fear that stops tongues or the instinct to preserve air for breathing rather than noise. You've never argued. You've just practiced silence long enough to know when to use it. You notice a paper fluttering in the alley, a page from a school book maybe, or a flyer. You watch it tumble once, then disappear behind a wall. She lifts her head and follows your gaze. "Is it windy enough for kites?" she asks. You smile faintly. Almost. Maybe later, she adds, already returning to her fortress of bottle caps. Maybe, you echo. You'll need to patch the kite again anyway. The frame broke last week. It was made from old chopsticks and some string she pulled from a fraying curtain. The paper A bakery bag. She drew flowers on it with a red pen that's now dry. You made her tie it with extra knots just in case. Back downstairs, you set the kettle on the gas canister and check the flame. It catches with a puff and a sputter. You watch it for a moment, mesmerized. There's something soothing in how stubborn the fire is, how it flickers and stays even in this half-broken world. You hear the muffled sound of a truck from the far street. Your ears perk, automatically alert for the rhythm of tires over potholes, the squeak of brakes. Aid truck or trash. You don't rush. Rushing never helps. But you step to the balcony window and peer through the cloth curtain. Trash. A cart, really, pulled by a man in a torn shirt. He's singing something, though, off-key but loud. That makes you smile. You return to the roof with the tea. It's not hot anymore. She doesn't mind. You drink together. And for a brief moment, the hum in your ears is just the fan of memory. The kind that pulls you backward into kitchens that had fridges, that worked into gardens, that had roses, into mornings that had nothing more urgent than missing the news. You blink slowly. The sky is quiet again. Too quiet. But you stay seated. The tea is still sweet. And so is this silence. The first sign of the afternoon call to prayer isn't the voice itself, but the way the air holds its breath just before. You hear the usual creak of metal speakers, then that long inhale of silence, then the wavering tones begin. They rise slowly like smoke from a narrow window, curling through alleys and rooftops, threading past bird cages and torn curtains. The voice is tired today. Or maybe your ears are. But it still finds you. Your granddaughter places her hands together like she's holding something invisible. She doesn't always pray, not in the formal way. But she likes the sound of the words and mimics the motions with soft concentration. You don't correct her. There is no wrong way to be reverent when you live beneath a sky like this. You sit cross-legged now, fingers resting loosely on your knees, letting the words pass over you without needing to recite them. They live in your chest anyway, etched in years of repetition, echoing through grief, joy, and routine. The cat appears halfway through the prayer. It hops gracefully onto the ledge, then lowers itself beside your granddaughter with casual ownership. She scratches it behind the ears. It allows this, but only just. You glance over. It's thinner than last week. You make a mental note to share a spoonful of rice later. Mainstream historical fact. In Gaza, stray cats are ubiquitous. Many families feed them, name them, even offer makeshift shelters. They become companions, silent witnesses to bombings, blackouts, and the long, dull hours in between. You reach for the small radio and turn the dial, slightly tuning past the static until a familiar song hums through. Not music, really more like a lullaby spoken in rhythm. Old words from older days. Before the wires were frayed, before the walls cracked from pressure waves, before you started counting buckets instead of blessings. Your granddaughter hums along, inventing words to fill the ones she doesn't know. She never met your mother, but somehow she sings exactly the way she did, off-tempo and too earnest. You chuckle softly. A surprise sound. You cover your mouth instinctively, like laughter might draw attention. She grins at you, proud. You nod. Good pitch, you say. What's pitch? You shrug. Something your uncle used to talk about when he tuned his oud. She considers this with the grave intensity only children can manage, then nods. I have good pitch. Yes, you agree. Yes, you do. She lies back down, arms stretched above her head like a sunbather staring at the sky with wide eyes. Do you think the stars can see us? She asks. Only when they blink, you reply. Quirky tidbit. Some Gazan families tell bedtime stories that the stars are shy angels peeking down only when the clouds aren't watching. You've told that story too, once, twice, maybe 100 times, especially when sleep felt like a stranger. A low rumble interrupts the quiet. It isn't loud, just persistent. You both freeze for a moment listening. It fades. A generator, maybe, or a car dragging something metal. Not a drone, not a jet. You note the difference. Your body has become its own classification system for sound. Historians still argue whether the body adapts to fear by dulling its receptors or by sharpening them. You're certain it does both. There are noises you can ignore now that once made you jump. And there are sounds you feel in your bones before your ears even register them. You stretch out your legs again, wincing at the pop in your knee. Your granddaughter sits up and wraps the edge of your scarf around your shoulder, a gesture she's copied from you many times. "Want me to braid your hair later?" she asks. You hesitate, then nod. "Yes. Make it tight so it lasts." She nods seriously. "Like armor," she says. "Exactly," you reply. She returns to her fortress of caps, adding a stick to the top like a flagpole. You wonder what she imagines the flag to look like. Probably something with stars, or cats. You rise and collect the teacups. Back downstairs, the kitchen is warmed with sun leaking through the shutter slats. You pour the remaining tea into the basin, not enough to save. You rinse each cup with care, turning them upside down on the cloth to dry. The clock on the wall has stopped again. You pretend not to notice. Time isn't measured by hands anymore, but by things like the weight of a laundry line or the way your ankles swell just before sunset. The power flickers just once, a brief surge of light. You freeze, but nothing holds. The fan sputters, dies. Back to the rooftop. She's asleep again. Not deeply, but enough. You sit beside her, back against the tank, eyes scanning the horizon with a tired kind of hope. A bird glides overhead, too fast to name. But you whisper anyway, "Swallow," just in case it heard you. The heat sinks deeper as the afternoon matures, pressing gently against your spine like a persistent memory. You sit back against the water tank, grateful for the shade it casts, however narrow. Your granddaughter remains curled on her side, one arm draped lazily over the cat, who's clearly decided to stay. You resist the urge to brush a strand of hair from her forehead. Any touch might wake her. And right now this soft stillness is too rare, too sacred to risk disturbing. Instead, you trace your eyes along the line of her brow, the shape of her cheeks, the rise and fall of her breath. You think to yourself she looks like her mother, and your chest tightens like it always does when that thought drifts in. You shift your attention outward. Across the rooftops, others are awake. A woman hangs sheets along a wire strung between satellite dishes. A teenage boy paces along the edge of his family's roof, back and forth like a sentry. On the far building, two children crouch beside a tub of water, dipping socks and wringing them out with theatrical grunts. You envy their energy. Mainstream historical fact. In 2014, Gaza, many families lived in multi-generational households where rooftops served not only as laundry zones, but also as makeshift playgrounds, kitchens, and at times shelters during air raids. In overcrowded neighborhoods, vertical space became a critical extension of the home. You lean your head back and close your eyes, just for a moment. A breeze stirs the hem of your scarf, and for the first time in hours you notice the scent of something sweet wafting faintly through the air, dates maybe, or the ghost of cardamom from someone's kettle. You breathe it in deeply. Hold it. Let it go. Then open your eyes again to the sight of your granddaughter blinking up at you. "I had a dream," she says, simply, her voice thick with sleep. "Tell me." "We were flying," she murmurs, "on a mat, but it wasn't magic, just very fast." You smile. "That sounds better than magic." She nods. "But then it started raining jelly beans and we had to land." You chuckle. "Obviously." "Obviously," she echoes. She sits up and looks around. "Is it time yet?" "For what, to do something?" "That's a hard one. You could wash more, or sweep, or boil the rice. But none of those feel like doing something the way she means. So instead you offer, "Let's braid hair." Her face lights up. You both move to the center of the mat. She begins with careful fingers sectioning off strands like a little scientist. 3 at a time, she whispers more to herself than you. You sit still, letting her tug and twist. "Is it too tight?" she asks after a minute. "No," you say, even though it is. A braid, after all, is supposed to hold. Quirky tidbit. In Gaza, young girls often learn to braid by practicing on cousins or neighbors during power cuts. Some even pretend their fingers are sewing machines complete with sound effects. Your granddaughter once spent a full afternoon pretending to embroider your scarf by poking it gently with a chopstick. She hums as she works inventing another tune. You wonder how many melodies have started this way on rooftops in heat with no instruments but fingers and imagination. Done, she announces proudly. You reach back and touch the braid. It's uneven. One strand is far thicker than the others, but it's perfect. You're a real hairdresser now, you declare. She bows theatrically. I charge 3 olives, she says. You hand her 5, pretending to wince at the cost. She pockets them in her dress and beams. You both lie back again, this time side by side. The cat hops over your legs and curls against the base of the tank. Somewhere nearby, someone begins playing a flute or something that might be a pipe or even a hollow stick. The melody is clumsy, but it dances lightly on the wind. You let it wash over you. Historians still argue whether music in war zones serves as resistance or distraction, whether singing is a rebellion or a lullaby. You don't argue, you just listen. Your granddaughter reaches over and links her pinky with yours. Promise we'll always do braids, she says. You squeeze her finger. Promise, you say. Below, a door slams, then silence again. You feel the weight of the sun shifting like an old friend preparing to say goodbye. Shadows lengthen, colors soften. The day begins to lean toward evening and the rooftops take on a quieter hum. You watch a cloud drift across the sky, not fast, not slow, just steady, like breath, like waiting. The evening sneaks in sideways, first as a blush across the concrete walls, then as a dimming around the edges of things. You don't notice it at first. It's the kind of shift that happens slowly enough to pretend nothing is changing. But when you glance at your granddaughter's face again, her features have gone from sunlit to shadowed. The cat, too, has become a silhouette curled into a dark comma against the water tank. You sit up slowly, joints stiff, ankles swollen. Time to go downstairs. Not because there's something urgent, there rarely is, but because the rhythm of the day demands it. Rooftops are for mornings and middays. Evenings belong to kitchens, to kerosene stoves, to windows cracked open just wide enough to smell the neighbor's onions frying. Your granddaughter doesn't protest when you say it's time. She gathers her handful of bottle caps and buttons her treasures and walks beside you down the stairs. You count them with your steps, 1 green cap, 1 blue, 1 shaped like a star. The hallway smells like wet concrete and cumin. Someone's cooking lentils. Someone else is boiling water for tea. You hear the soft shuffle of slippers, the distant hum of the radio in the flat below. Life, stubborn and persistent, fills every crevice. Mainstream historical fact. During prolonged blackouts in Gaza, families often organize their evenings around battery-powered radios and shared meals. Cooking fuel is scarce, so stoves are timed like rituals. One-pot meals dominate not out of preference but practicality. You light the single gas burner and set a small pot on top. Rice tonight. And maybe half a tomato diced small enough to convince the senses it's more than it is. Your granddaughter hums as she arranges the utensils, 1 spoon for each of you, plus the metal ladle that always burns your fingers. She insists on setting the table, even if it's just the crate turned on its side and the 2 chipped bowls. Should I make dessert? She asks. You smile. What's on the menu? She grins. Olives. Perfect, you say. While the rice cooks, you sit by the window. You press your palm against the iron bars, not to test them, not anymore, just to feel the cool metal. Outside, children laugh faintly in the alleyway. Someone shouts a name. Then a dog barks, then silence again. A gust of wind carries in a scrap of newspaper. It flutters across the sill before collapsing. You pick it up. It's in Hebrew, someone else's discarded headline. You fold it and tuck it behind the curtain. Not everything needs translating. Your granddaughter returns with a tiny bouquet wild mint and 1 brave yellow weed. She sets it in a jar and places it dead center on the table. For freshness, she declares. Very fancy, you reply. Quirky tidbit. Some Gazan children, unable to access paint or paper, decorate their rooms with flowers pressed between old school books or draw murals using coal on the walls. Your granddaughter once painted an entire night sky using tea and a makeup brush. She watches the rice nose inches from the pot. It smells like a feast, she whispers. You nod. It is, you say. When it's ready, you scoop it into bowls, dividing it carefully. 2 bites for her, 1 for you, repeat. The tomato is evenly shared. Even the salty water at the bottom gets poured into a small cup, her favorite part. You eat slowly, like the meal is longer if you chew it softer. Historians still argue whether rationing trains the body to require less, or if it simply teaches you to forget what fullness felt like. Your granddaughter eats quickly, then licks her spoon. That was so much, she sighs. You kiss the top of her head. Enough for queens, you say. She helps wash the dishes afterward, standing on a cracked stool, sleeves rolled up like a little mechanic. She sings again, this time a nonsense song about rice grains forming a parade. Do you think grains talk to each other, she asks. Only at night, you reply. She nods solemnly as if confirming a theory. After dishes, it's time for evening prayers. She wraps a scarf around her shoulders, not quite right, but the intent is there. You both sit on the mat. She whispers, following your motions, mimicking the rhythm, the pauses. You glance sideways at her. She's making up words again, but they feel real enough. When prayers end, she yawns dramatically. Can we sleep on the roof tonight? You consider it. There are no sirens, no hums. The night is soft. The moon is full. We can try, you say. She races to gather the cushions and the worn blanket. You grab the mat and the pitcher of water. Back up the stairs again. The rooftop is cooler now, air tinged with sea salt and something vaguely metallic. You lay out the bedding. The cat follows, leaping silently into position near your feet. Your granddaughter snuggles close, tiny arms wrapping around your elbow. Tell me a story, she says. You pause, then begin. There once was a girl who could fly, she gasps. Was her name like mine? You nod. Exactly like yours. She smiles, eyes half-lidded already. You weave nonsense about flying goats, cloud ladders, and secret doors in the stars. Her breath slows. The city hums quietly below, and above the sky stretches wide and patient. She sleeps before the stars are even fully out. Curled beside you, her breath warm against your arm, her fingers still clinging lightly to the edge of your sleeve, as if even in dreams she's afraid you might float away. You lie back, letting your eyes blur against the vastness above. The sky tonight is generous, cloudless, and silver-strewn. You can pick out Orion just barely, though the lights from the coast make everything a little washed out. Somewhere beyond that, the sea is shifting in its sleep, unaware or indifferent to everything it holds near. You shift just enough to glance toward the southern edge of the roof, where the other buildings crowd like dominoes, each with its own little rooftop theater playing out a quiet scene. An old man smokes alone near a battered radio. A pair of siblings doze back to back, wrapped in one large sheet. A young couple whispers near a bucket of mint tea, their voices too low to reach you, but their rhythm unmistakable hope threaded into hush. It's strange, the peace of it, almost dishonest. Mainstream historical fact. By 2014, over 80% of Gaza's population relied on humanitarian aid. Yet despite the scarcity, rooftop life became a shared ritual for many families. These elevated spaces allowed for quiet reprieve, safe zones above the noise of the street and often the reach of immediate danger. You listen. There's music again. Someone's plucking at a soft, lonesome tune that climbs into the air like a smoke signal seeking something. You recognize it barely. A folk melody your grandmother used to hum. You remember sitting at her feet while she shelled almonds, the cracked skins falling into a bowl like dry rain. You hadn't thought of that in years. You glance at your granddaughter, still asleep, her mouth twitching slightly in dream speech. You whisper something to her, just a thread of the old tune. She stirs, then stills again. The cat lifts its head, listens, then lays it back down with a sigh that's almost human. Historians still argue whether dreams in places of war carry heavier meaning. Some believe that dreaming under threat heightens the imagination, makes memory more vivid. Others argue it's a form of dissociation protection, not prophecy. You're not sure. But you do know this: every night your granddaughter dreams she can fly, And every morning she wakes up just a little taller. A breeze tiptoes across your skin. It's the kind of breeze that smells like bread baking 2 blocks away. You close your eyes and pretend it's coming from your own oven, that you're back in your kitchen from long ago, the one with the sunflower tiles and the wooden spoon that always stuck to the pot. Your fingers curl slightly like you're gripping that spoon again. Quirky tidbit. In older Gazan homes, some women used to write secret recipes in the folds of their scarves stitched in thread, a code only they could read. It was said that if a woman whispered her recipe while cooking, it would remember better the next time. You whisper now not a recipe, just a list of names, the people you've loved, the places that don't exist anymore, the tiny moments that still live in your hands. Your granddaughter murmurs something in her sleep. You lean closer. She's not coming back. You nod. I know, but it still hurts. The sky presses closer. The stars blink slower now. The wind is stilled. You sense the hour shifting. The city below is mostly dark, save for the blinking red lights atop a cell tower and the faint flicker of someone's candle against a window pane. No sirens, no hums, just breath. Yours, hers, the cat's. The night exhaling softly as if not wanting to wake anyone. You lie still, trying not to think of tomorrow. But you do. Of course you do. Of water lines, of power cuts, of the way your knees ache when you stand, of how much rice is left in the bag, of whether the market will open, of whether the boy with the bicycle will bring eggs again, of whether tonight's peace is real or borrowed. You hold on to your granddaughter's hand, grip it lightly, just enough to feel her pulse, just enough to remind yourself that you're both still here. Above you a single shooting star slices the sky. You don't make a wish, you just watch it vanish. And then for a long, long while you don't move at all. Dawn doesn't ask permission, it just slips in, quiet, insistent, a soft bruise of color blooming behind the rooftops. The first light is pink, then pale orange, like someone painted the sky with old jam. You feel it before you see it, your skin warming slightly, your eyelids thinning against the brightness even while closed. Your back aches. The blanket has slipped halfway off. The cat is gone. But your granddaughter is still there, tucked against you like a second heartbeat. She's breathing, slow and steady, mouth slightly open. A small thread of drool has dried against her cheek. You don't wipe it. It feels too holy somehow, like proof of the safety she found in her sleep. You stay still for a while, because you can, because stillness is the last luxury. Mainstream historical fact. In many Gaza neighborhoods, electricity returns in unpredictable short bursts, sometimes in the early morning hours. Families adapt their routines accordingly, using the brief window of power to charge devices, run washing machines, or fill water tanks. From below you hear the sudden artificial cough of a generator sputtering to life. A sign. One of the neighbors must have gotten a few liters of fuel yesterday. You hope they'll let you plug in your small radio for a while. It's not for the news, you're not sure you can bear that, but for the sound of something beyond these walls. Even static feels like company. Your granddaughter stirs. Mimi. Yes, Habibti. Did the bird come? You pause. Not yet. She nods, still half asleep. It's probably shy. Probably. She sits up slowly, rubbing her eyes with the heels of her palms like a sleepy cartoon character. Her hair stands in all directions. You smooth it down, then give up. The chaos suits her. I had a dream, she says. What was it? I was a cloud. I floated over our house and waved at you. But you didn't see me. You were looking for me on the ground. You nod. That makes sense. Historians still argue whether children in war zones develop more vivid dreams as a coping mechanism, or if they simply hold on to fantasy longer because reality gives them so little to work with. You gather the bedding folding with one hand, shaking out dust with the other. The rooftop is already warming under your feet. Below, the street begins to thrum more like a pulse than a sound. Doors open. Metal scrapes. Someone whistles tunelessly. A rooster crows bravely late. You carry everything down, step by step. Your granddaughter skips ahead, trailing her fingers along the wall as she descends. The flat smells stale. Yesterday's rice and soap and people. You open the window wider. The breeze brings in a plastic bag which you catch with a practiced hand. One more thing to reuse. Breakfast is 2 slices of stale bread softened with water and a smear of oil. She eats both without complaint, licking her fingers clean like she's just devoured a feast. Can we paint today? With what she shrugs. Maybe tea or tomato juice. You chuckle. Let's see how much we want to waste. Quirky tidbit. Some families in Gaza have turned daily chores into art. Children draw with soot on broken tiles. Mothers embroider traditional motifs onto old shirts. Grandfathers carve chess pieces from bottle caps and broomsticks. Necessity as always breeds strange beauty. You decide to humor her. She sets up her painting station, 1 cracked bowl, 2 tiny brushes, 1 made from a frayed toothbrush, and a slice of cardboard scavenged from yesterday's delivery box. You make tea not to drink, but to create a warm, earthy watercolor. She paints a bird again, but this time it's bigger. This time it has a nest in its beak. You nod, not asking questions. She knows what she's doing. The day grows louder. The generator cuts off. The fans still. The walls begin to sweat. You both retreat to the shadiest corner of the flat where the light filters in at a tired angle and the air is less judgmental. You doze briefly. Not quite sleep. More like a truce with consciousness. When you wake, she's drawing on your arm with a finger dipped in tea. "I gave you wings," she says. You glance down. Did they work? She considers this. "Only if you believe." "Of course." She leans her head on your shoulder. The bird outside caws loudly. Not the mythical kind, the real one. The slightly ragged one that lives in the hole above the power lines. Your granddaughter caws back. It flies away. She watches it go, mouth slightly open. "We should follow it one day," she says. Where would it take us, she thinks. Somewhere with peaches. You smile, then freeze. A new sound, far off but unmistakable. That low mechanical buzz like a wasp nest made of engines. Your granddaughter stiffens, eyes narrowing. Inside, you say not loudly. She moves without question. The bird is gone. The painting is still wet. The teacup trembles on its saucer. And somewhere beyond your sight, the sky begins to frown again. Inside, the light is weak and uneven. You draw the curtain across the one intact window, though you leave a small slit just enough to peek through. Your granddaughter sits cross-legged on the mat, clutching the painting. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The buzzing fades slightly, veering away, or maybe just changing direction. You don't chase it with your ears. You've learned the hard way that sometimes ignorance is armor. You sit beside her. She lifts the painting and fans it gently, trying to dry the T-bird. You can see where the edges have blurred, bleeding into the cardboard like a memory left out in the rain. "It still looks like a bird," she says. "It always will." You reach for the water jug, half full. Enough for the morning, maybe not for the evening. You pour a small cup and hand it to her. She doesn't drink all of it. She takes a sip, then carefully sets it down. Mainstream historical fact. During peak shortages in 2014, many Gazan families received water deliveries only once every 3-5 days. Those who had rooftop tanks would ration carefully, and children were taught early to calculate every drop. "I think the bird should have a name," she says. "What kind?" She frowns. "Something hopeful," you think. "How about Amal?" She beams. "Yes, Amal, hope." The sky outside is still behaving, though clouds are creeping in slow, cotton-colored things that you hope mean nothing. The radio sputters to life, just for a moment, then dies. The neighbor must have found a few more seconds of electricity. Or maybe the wind gave the wire a sympathetic nudge. You listen hard. Did you hear a name? A number, a warning? No. Just static, then silence. Your granddaughter climbs onto your lap, arms around your neck, the painting crushed slightly between you. "Tell me a story," she says. "Which one?" "The one about the pomegranate tree." You nod. It's not a long story. It's not even entirely true. But it's one you know by heart. Once you begin, there was a tree that grew in the middle of a courtyard behind a house just like ours. And the tree was so tall it could see over the walls. It could see the sea. It could see the birds flying to other cities. But the tree never left, even when it could have. Why not? Because it was waiting. For what? For the little girl who used to water it. She smiles. That's me? Of course. She leans her head against your shoulder. Quirky tidbit. In old Gaza, families would plant a pomegranate tree when a daughter was born. It was believed that when the first fruit ripened, it meant she was ready to marry. Some women carved their initials into the bark. Others whispered secrets to the leaves. You continue the story, letting your voice slow. The girl left for a long time, but the tree didn't forget. It held her laughter in its branches, her footsteps in its roots. And when she finally came back, the tree had one perfect pomegranate waiting. What did she do with it? She shared it. Even the seeds, all of them. The story ends. The light shifts again. Your granddaughter climbs down and returns to her painting. It's dry now. She adds something new, a second bird smaller flying just behind the first. You pretend not to notice, your eyes stinging. Historians still argue whether storytelling in war zones is a form of resistance or survival. Whether it's meant to preserve culture or simply give children something to hold on to when the world around them is always slipping away. You think it can be both. Your knees crack as you stand. She giggles. You roll your eyes dramatically and say, "That's the sound of a very old tree." She nods, solemn. You step outside briefly. Just the front step. Just enough to feel the air. The sky is gray, but it hasn't broken. You return inside and boil a tiny bit of water. Not for tea, for steam. You mix it with a drop of lemon and set the bowl between you. She leans over it, eyes closed, inhaling like it's perfume. You both sit like that for a while, not talking, not moving, just breathing. The outside world knocks occasionally, a car horn, a shout, a ball bouncing off the wall. But you don't answer, not yet. This hour is yours. This small, quiet nothingness. This breath between storms. You think of Amal, the painted bird, and the real one. You think of the tree that waited. You think of how many more mornings you'll need to invent new stories, and whether the stories will be enough. The wind picks up sometime after noon, scattering dry leaves and whispers down the alleyway. Your granddaughter is asleep again, curled in the narrow beam of light cast through the broken shutter. Her painting lies beside her, folded into a careful square. She's using it as a pillow. You should move it, but you don't. She's smiling in her sleep. You sit near the window, ears pricked like an old dog trained to listen for trouble. It's quiet, but not peaceful. The quiet here always feels like it's holding its breath. Your eyes drift shut, but you don't sleep. Not really. You daydream. Or maybe you memory dream. Of your own childhood. Before curfews, before checkpoints, before ration cards and olive oil measured in teaspoons. A courtyard shaded by vines. The sound of your mother grinding spices. The smell of lemon and soap. A radio playing Egyptian love songs through the static. You open your eyes and it's gone. Even the light has shifted again. Mainstream historical fact. In the mid-2010s, Gaza's economy was operating at less than 20% capacity. Over 70% of the population was under 30, and youth unemployment was among the highest in the world. You check the cupboard. 3 onions, a heel of bread, 1 tomato. You smile despite yourself. It's enough for something. You slice the tomato into translucent petals, douse them in salt, and let them sit in a cracked bowl. The onions are fried quickly, more scent than substance. The bread goes in last, softening under the oil, soaking up everything like memory. Your granddaughter wakes to the smell, nose twitching. Did I miss lunch? No, you say. You just arrived in time. She eats like she hasn't tasted food in a week, even though you both know this is yesterday's onion warmed in tomorrow's oil. She offers you the last bite. You pretend you're too full. She doesn't argue. Afterwards, she stacks the bowls carefully, then asks, "Can we visit Uncle Farid?" You hesitate. It's a fair question. He lives just 6 blocks away. But those 6 blocks cross a checkpoint that may or may not be open. And even if it's open, you'd need to explain why 2 civilians are out walking today. And even if that's allowed, there's no guarantee his building hasn't lost its roof again. Tomorrow, you say. She nods. She's used to tomorrow. Used to it meaning never, or maybe, or later if God wills. Quirky tidbit. In some Gazan neighborhoods, children play checkpoint as a game. One group acts as guards while the others attempt to pass with pretend ID cards made of scrap paper. The game often ends in argument, sometimes in tears. The afternoon slinks by. She draws again. Not birds this time. This time she draws doors, all kinds. Wooden ones, iron gates, curtains, car doors, elevator doors, a wall of portals. What are these exits? From where she shrugs. Depends who's drawing. The light turns gold, not soft gold. Harsh gold, the kind that makes every crack in the wall seem deeper. Historians still argue whether daily repetition in war zones is a psychological necessity or a form of numbness, whether routines protect the mind or simply distract it from collapse. You sweep the floor, boil the last of the tea, fold clothes that haven't been worn in a week, wash a bowl that was already clean, because it fills the space, because it beats counting the days. Your granddaughter plays a game in the corner, lining up crumbs like villagers in a tiny world. She gives them names, assigns them jobs. One crumb is a teacher, another sells peaches. One is the mayor. He has a crumb car. You don't interrupt. It's a better government than most. The wind picks up again. A loud thud echoes down the alley. A metal door slamming or something worse. You and your granddaughter lock eyes. You wait. 3 seconds, 5, 10, no follow-up. The world resumes. She exhales. You make her tea. Too weak to taste but warm enough to hold. You watch the steam rise in the fading light, curling toward the ceiling like it's searching for somewhere safer. Tomorrow, she says again. Yes, we'll fly with Amal if she returns. She will. There's no doubt in her voice. Only in yours. You listen to the walls creak, to a neighbor coughing through thin concrete, to a radio whispering 2 doors down, and you hold your cup like it might turn into a bird too. You don't light the candle until the last thread of sunlight disappears from the window slit. You wait as always to make sure you're not wasting it. Candles are currency now, as precious as painkillers or chocolate or batteries. You strike the match with practiced calm. One flick, one flame. The room glows with a soft amber hue. Your granddaughter claps gently like it's magic. Maybe it is. She places the painting of Amal, the flying T-bird, in front of the candle so it casts a bird-shaped shadow on the far wall. You both sit watching it flap gently and the candles tremble. She's getting closer, she whispers. You nod. She's almost here. Dinner is just hot water with a dash of salt. Soup, in theory. You drink it slowly, letting the salt settle on your tongue like a memory of food. Your granddaughter eats hers with a spoon. A full performance complete with sighs and satisfied smiles. Mainstream historical fact. During the siege, many Gazan families boiled herbs or even paper to simulate meals during food shortages, especially in refugee camps. Hunger became a thing to be choreographed. Outside, the alley is dark. Not quiet, never quiet, but hushed. Muted shouting, distant engines, a cartwheel creaking. Somewhere a generator hums like an angry bee. Inside, your granddaughter opens her notebook. She's writing a letter. To whom, you ask? To Amal. You watch her as she shapes each letter carefully, her tongue sticking out just slightly the way she always does when she concentrates. What are you telling her? That we're ready? You nod. Will she answer? She already has, she says without looking up. She came in a dream last night. She said we have to keep the window cracked so she can get in. You glance at the window glass, fractured like a spider web, sealed with cloth and tape. You reach over and peel back a corner. Just in case. Quirky tidbit. In many Palestinian households, especially in older generations, dreams are not metaphor, they're guidance. A visit from a bird is often seen as a message from the divine, a relative or a future omen. Children are taught to pay attention and elders are expected to interpret. She finishes the letter and folds it into a triangle, then whispers something to it, then tucks it under the mat. Tomorrow, she says again. Yes, you're not afraid, right? You smile. A real one. No, not tonight. The candle flickers harder. A gust, maybe. You both stare at it, willing it not to die. It doesn't. Not yet. You remember the old candle trick, pressing the melted wax into a dish to create a reservoir. You do it now, fingers steady despite the heat. The flame steadies, trapped in a puddle of itself. Your granddaughter yawns. You pat your lap. She climbs onto it like she did when she was 2 knees, still bony, head still too light. You stroke her hair. She smells of dust and tea and warm paper. The world narrows to that. Historians still argue whether children who grow up in war zones lose their childhoods or merely transform them into something else. Whether innocence vanishes or becomes a sharper tool for survival. You don't know. You only know she dreams in birds and speaks to hope like it's her cousin. She sleeps quickly. You stay still for an hour, then 2. Your legs go numb, but you don't move. The candle gives up eventually. You don't relight it. You sit in the darkness, pulse slowing, breath shallow, listening to the tiny sounds of survival. The drip of the faucet, the brush of her foot against the wall, the shuffle of fabric on concrete, and just once, maybe, a faint flutter from the cracked window. You smile into the dark, not because you know, but because you want to. And tonight that is enough. When dawn creeps in, it doesn't knock. It simply seeps slow and colorless through the fabric hung across your window. You open your eyes before the light fully arrives, that familiar internal clock chiming in your bones, even though sleep only arrived in fragments. Your granddaughter is still curled in your lap, her face turned toward your chest, breathing slow, even unbothered. You don't dare wake her yet. She doesn't get enough of this kind of sleep. No one does. Your legs ache, your back groans, but there's a kind of sacred weight in holding her like this. As if in the quietest hours you can shield her from things she's too young to name but already too old to ignore. When she stirs, you gently ease her off your lap and onto the mat. She mutters something about the T-bird in her sleep and then drifts again. You let her. You go to the window. No smoke, no sound, no sky screaming. It's a good sign. But you don't trust good signs anymore. They have a way of turning bitter by lunchtime. You boil water again this time, just to warm the air, not for tea. You've done it so many times that even the kettle whistle feels like an old friend showing up uninvited. Mainstream historical fact. In times of prolonged siege, many Gazan homes repurposed everything: old radios wired into LED bulbs, teapots becoming humidifiers, even broken televisions used to store rice or lentils. Resourcefulness wasn't a skill, it was the only path forward. You take out the letter. The one she wrote to Amal. You don't open it. You wouldn't dare. But you set it on the windowsill, folded precisely the way she left it. A symbolic gesture. An invitation. You imagine the bird coming in through that crack in the window, landing on the folded triangle, tapping it gently with its beak before flying off again. Some mornings imagination is more filling than bread. She wakes slowly, eyes adjusting to the dusty light. Is it morning? You nod. Did Amal come? You gesture toward the window. I think so. She runs over, stands on tiptoes and peeks, then gasps. There's a feather. Well, something that could be a feather. A wisp of lint, a scrap of cotton from the curtain. Or maybe just wishful thinking. But her eyes light up. She was here. You don't correct her. Why would you, quirky tidbit? Some Palestinian families pass down tiny glass jars filled with wishes, scraps of paper, tiny feathers, even grains of colored sand. The contents vary, but they're often tied to dreams or unanswered prayers. When a wish is believed to come true, the jar is buried. She cradles the feather in her hand like it's priceless. Maybe it is. You go about the morning rituals, wipe down the floor, stack the pans, check the plastic basin where you hope some rain leaked in overnight. It didn't. The water sits at the same resigned level as yesterday. She sketches another bird, this one flying above a city made of matchboxes. You glance over. That one has a crown. She's the queen bird. Of what she pauses. Everything we haven't lost. Historians still argue whether symbolic play in wartime nurtures resilience or delays trauma. Whether children with imaginary companions survive emotionally better or simply mask their wounds with better metaphors. Your granddaughter doesn't worry about those questions. She's busy adding flames to the matchbox city red lines curling into the sky. Not destructive, just dramatic. Artistic license, she calls it. You offer her the last dried fig from the cupboard. She breaks it in half and shares it. You chew slowly, savoring the sweetness like a luxury. The silence outside holds. You almost relax. Then a sound. Not loud, not nearby, but enough. A dull thud somewhere toward the west. She stops drawing. You both listen. A second thud. Farther this time. Then nothing. You say, might have been thunder. She nods but doesn't finish her drawing. You offer a distraction. Should we plant something today? She blinks. We don't have seeds. Doesn't have to be seeds. She thinks about that. Can we plant the feather? You smile. We can try. Quirky or not, it's the best idea you've heard all week. You dig a shallow hole in a broken pot, drop the feather in, cover it with dust and water it with 2 spoonfuls of tea. There. Now we wait. Now we believe. She claps her hands. A mal's tree. Yes, you say. And when it grows, it'll be taller than the wall. You both sit beside it, watching, waiting, imagining. And for a full hour, the world is just a pot of dirt, a paper bird, and a grandmother who still remembers how to pretend. The wind shifts that afternoon, dry and restless. It sneaks through the alleyways like gossip, tugging at the laundry lines and rattling the tin rooftops. You watch your granddaughter chase her own shadow on the rooftop, arms stretched wide like wings. She's trying to fly, obviously. The feather she planted this morning now sits beneath a small stack of pebbles, her version of a fence to keep it safe. She checks on it every 20 minutes just to see if it's grown yet. You haven't the heart to tell her it won't. Instead, you offer her an old tin cup and say, "If you listen closely, it sounds like bird song." She holds it to her ear. "You're right," she whispers. "Of course you're not. It's just the wind echoing off the metal. But if it brings her comfort, it might as well be a full orchestra of feathers and flutes." You look up. The sky's clearer than it's been all week, wide, pale blue with streaks of dusty gold. It looks like a painting from before, the kind people used to hang in hotel lobbies. Mainstream historical fact. Before the blockade intensified, Gaza's coastal skyline was dotted with luxury hotels, beachfront cafes, and weekend markets. The modern world seeped in like sunlight through a curtain, slow, warm, and almost forgettable until it stopped. Your knees ache as you lower yourself onto the mat. Your granddaughter runs over breathless. "Did you see that? What a flash." You blink. "Where there?" she says, pointing to the west. Maybe it was a mall. Maybe it was sunlight. Maybe sunlight is a mall. She shrugs. Well, that's not a bad theory. She sits beside you, sweaty and glowing. You fan her with a piece of cardboard. Then she asks the question she's been saving. "Do you remember before you inhale slowly?" That depends on what she means. Before what? Before all this. Before a mall, she smiles. Before it got loud. You do remember. You remember ice cream in the street, the squeak of school shoes, the smell of jasmine at night, music from wedding parties echoing down the concrete corridors. You remember silence as something gentle, not this awful waiting for the worst kind, but the real silence like the hush before a song starts. "Yes," you say. "I remember." "What did it sound like?" You pause. Like a spoon tapping glass. Like wind in a curtain. Like someone reading out loud. Will it sound like that again? You want to say yes, you want to. Instead, you say, "I hope so," because you do, and because she needs you to. Quirky tidbit. Some older Palestinian women still keep cassette tapes of family gatherings, laughs, speeches, even just casual dinners, just to remember what normal sounded like. These tapes are often played on ancient Walkmans or battery-powered radios passed down like relics. The day drags on heavy in the bones. You both lie flat on the concrete floor, letting the last heat of the sun soak into your skin. She hums the song again, the one she says Amal taught her. You close your eyes and almost believe it. Historians still argue whether hope in a place like this is naive or necessary, whether telling a child stories about flying birds and growing feathers is kindness or simply a lie wrapped in comfort. But your granddaughter isn't debating that. She's naming the tree. Amal's nest, she decides. It'll be full of notes. Like a post office in the sky. You nod. What's the first letter you'll send? She thinks hard, then says, "I'll tell her thank you for the feather." And what will she write back? She'll say, "Keep the window open." Of course she will. The sun slips lower, painting the walls with long shadows. You boil more water this time for real tea. A treat. You drop half a mint leaf in each cup. A ritual. You sit side by side, sipping slowly. The city beyond the rooftop hums. Not sirens, not shouting, just hums. For now. You let her fall asleep early tonight. She wraps herself in a blanket patterned with faded cartoon stars. She mumbles one last thing as her eyelids droop. What if Amal is waiting for us? She is, you whisper. She always is. You don't believe in magic, but you do believe in children who carry it anyway. Later that night, you sit alone by the window again. The stars are dull tonight, blotted out by haze, maybe dust, maybe something else. But you still look for them. Some nights they twinkle like someone tapping on glass. Other nights like this one, they feel farther away, like someone has drawn a curtain across the sky. You glance down at the street. It's quieter than usual. Not the comfortable kind of quiet, but the thick, uncertain kind. You know what it means. You've felt it too many times. That tension in the air before something shifts. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders even though the night is still warm. Habit. Shielding yourself against things you can't quite name. In the corner, your granddaughter snores softly, her hand still curled around that imaginary letter from Amal. You let her hold it. Why not? In some traditions, letters never sent are still considered heard, as if the act of writing them launches the words into the air where someone or something receives them. Maybe that's all we need, really. The hope that something is listening. You boil more water, there's no tea left, not really. But you let the steam rise anyway, filling the room with the idea of tea. That's enough sometimes. Mainstream historical fact. During extended blockades, Gazan families often created makeshift beverages from dried herbs, crushed leaves, or even flavored stones boiled in water. The result wasn't always pleasant, but it gave the illusion of routine a small piece of normality in an unrecognizable world. The steam curls toward the ceiling. You follow it with your eyes, letting your thoughts drift. You remember your own mother's rooftop. Different war, different fear, same sky. She used to whisper stories about birds that knew how to return. They don't use maps, she'd say. They just follow the wind and something inside them that always knows the way back. You didn't believe her then, but you do now. You whisper to yourself, maybe Amal is like that. The kettle hisses louder, then fades. Outside, a far-off flash blinks along the horizon. You don't flinch anymore. Your body has learned its own emotional economy, what to spend your fear on and what to let pass. Inside the pot on the windowsill, the feather still lies under dust. You water it again out of ritual, out of love, out of stubbornness. Your granddaughter stirs. She blinks at you, groggy. Did it grow? You shake your head. Maybe it needs more stories, she yawns. Maybe. She nestles deeper into the blanket. Tell it one. And so you do. You tell the story of a girl with wings on her heels and eyes that could see through walls and laughter that echoed louder than thunder. You tell the story slowly, like pouring honey. Quirky tidbit Palestinian oral tradition includes shadow stories, tales not written down, told only at night, often by candlelight, and passed from grandmother to grandchild. These stories are rarely retold in the same way, changing slightly with each generation, like sand shifting in a breeze. You change the ending. In your version, the girl never leaves. She simply climbs higher and higher until she sees everything clearly and decides to plant feathers in every garden so the children never forget how to wait for wings. Your granddaughter smiles in her sleep. Historians still argue whether storytelling in conflict zones serves as cultural resistance or just escapism, whether these narratives keep hope alive or distract from the need to act. But none of those scholars have met your granddaughter. She knows exactly what stories are for. You lean back against the wall, bones sighing. Somewhere outside, the world rumbles again. You don't move. You've learned that danger and silence take turns like old dancers. And if you close your eyes just enough, you can almost hear the music behind their footsteps. Tomorrow, the water will still need fetching. The rooftop will still be dusty. The tea will still be imaginary. But tonight, just for now, you let the soft weight of the dark press against your skin like a warm blanket. You breathe in the steam. You wait for the sound of wings. And when nothing comes, you still smile. Because sometimes nothing is enough. You wake to sunlight and silence. The first feels like a gift, the second a warning. It's a silence you recognize, the kind that creeps in on purpose, like it's hiding something behind its back. You lie still for a moment, letting your ears adjust. No drones, no shouting, not even a rooster. Your granddaughter is already sitting up, her hair a wild cloud, her eyes scanning the window. She hasn't come yet, she says softly. No, you reply. But maybe today. She nods with all the solemnity of a village elder. You rise slowly, your joints popping like old furniture. The shawl slides off your shoulder and you tuck it back around you. Today it smells like dust and mint leftovers from last night's pretend tea. You begin the morning rituals. Refill the water jar, sweep the rooftop, brush away the tiny beetles that crawl through cracks in the wall. Your granddaughter follows a small shadow, mimicking your every move. She even hums as she sweeps like you used to do when you were young and still believed chores could chase away war. Mainstream historical fact. In Gaza, rooftop living became increasingly common during and after the blockade. Families extended homes upward rather than outward, turning rooftops into kitchens, bedrooms, and even schools when buildings below were damaged or destroyed. These open spaces also became sanctuaries, places to escape the cramped interiors and regain a sliver of sky. On the rooftop, your granddaughter sets out her treasures, the old tin cup, the feather, and the notebook. She opens the latter and draws something her version of a mall. The bird looks like a pigeon married a phoenix, tail like firebeak, like a heart. She shows it to you with pride. She's growing, she says. You nod. She's beautiful. And she's late. Birds have strange clocks. Do you think she's stuck, maybe? Should we help her? Maybe we already are. She grins, then draws a second bird. This one is smaller, clearly meant to be her. It has pigtails and giant round eyes. Amal's bringing me to the sky, she announces. We're going to visit the stars. Remember to send a postcard, you tease. I'll send you a whole feather. You laugh softly, carefully. You're about to ask her what the stars look like up close when you hear it, a far-off thump. Not loud, not close, but enough to change the air. You both freeze. She grips your hand. Not today, you whisper. Today's for birds. You try to distract her. You pour imaginary tea. You tell a story about a turtle who wanted to marry a cloud. She listens half-hearted. Then, when she thinks you're not looking, she lifts the feather and presses it to her cheek. She closes her eyes. Quirky tidbit. In old Bedouin traditions, feathers were used in dreams as guides. Placing a feather under your pillow was thought to direct your sleep toward messages or distant lands. Some still do it not as belief, but as comfort. You let her nap that way, feather in hand, feet dirty from rooftop dust, cheeks flushed with hope. You meanwhile sew. Not because you need to, but because the rhythm helps. The needle in the thread, through the pull, the knot. It's like breathing for your fingers. The cloth is torn, old, faded. But your hands remember how to make it whole again. Historians still argue whether domestic routines in war zones are acts of denial or defiance, whether sweeping the floor or boiling water is clinging to hope or ignoring reality. But you don't care what they say. You know the truth. These rituals are survival disguised as normalcy. The sky darkens slowly. Evening comes like a sigh. Your granddaughter wakes, rubs her eyes, looks to the window. Still no bird. You say nothing. She doesn't ask. Instead, she draws a third bird, this one just a shadow behind the other two. What's that one, you ask? It's you, she says. You pause. I don't have wings. Yes, you do. But they're invisible. You swallow. Hard. The night hums to life again. The distant rumble. A horn. A child crying somewhere across the rooftops. Familiar sounds. The sounds of waiting. You light a candle. You tell her the story again, of Amal, of the tree, of the window. And just before she falls asleep, she says, I think she's close. I heard her laugh in my dream. You smile, and for once you don't say maybe. You say, I know. At dawn you wake to wind. Not the soft breeze of early morning, but something else, faster, twitchy, unsettled. It rattles the tin dishes outside and lifts the curtain in a single breath. You sit up slowly, your knees aching before your feet even touch the floor. The air tastes different, drier, laced with sand. Your granddaughter is already awake, sitting upright on the mat, eyes wide. She flew past, she whispers. You blink. Who, Amal? I saw her. Just for a second. You want to ask if it was a dream, but you don't. You know the difference between stories and sightings. You know the tone children use when they're pretending and the tone they use when they've seen something they don't fully understand. This is the second kind. You go to the window. It's cracked, but the cloth you used to seal it has been pushed aside. The air that enters feels electric, like something's shifting, something stirring in the invisible space between memory and possibility. Down below, a woman is sweeping her doorstep. A man pushes a cart full of empty bottles. A child chases a chicken, nothing unusual. And yet, everything feels charged. You brew more imaginary tea. Your granddaughter pours it carefully into her tin cup. She blows on it even though it's not hot. Mainstream historical fact Gazans during the early 2010s frequently faced prolonged electricity blackouts, up to 12 to 18 hours a day. Many used wood fires, car batteries, and homemade stoves for cooking and boiling water. In some neighborhoods, water delivery became a communal event, bucket chains of children and mothers ferrying what little they had. You remember those days? Still live them, really. The dark isn't the same as quiet, and the quiet isn't the same as peace. But this morning, even in the wind, there's a kind of calm. You both go to the rooftop. It's cooler now, dust settled from the breeze. She crouches near her drawing, the two birds, and the shadow one. She points. They're talking. What do they say? They're deciding where to land. You nod. And they said our roof is small. It is, but big enough. She begins to arrange the tin cups in a half circle. Then she tears a bit of cloth and makes a makeshift nest. You don't stop her. You help her. It feels right, even if you're both just playing. Quirky tidbit. In some Palestinian folk tales, birds were believed to deliver dreams to children, but only if the home was quiet and the heart was still. Mothers would sometimes hush children before bedtime, not just for discipline, but to keep the path open for the dream birds. You spend the day like that, arranging things, drawing more birds, telling small jokes to pass the time. At one point, your granddaughter insists you make wings. You cut two shapes from the old flour sack. She ties them to her back with string. You need a pair too, she says. I'm too old for wings. No one's too old, she declares. They just forget how to wear them. She tapes two more wings to your shawl. You feel ridiculous, and strangely more like yourself than you have in weeks. She spins once, arms out, hair whipping behind her. I'm ready, she says. Ready for what to lift off? She closes her eyes, spins again, flops onto the blanket with dramatic flair. You laugh so hard your ribs hurt. Then you lie next to her and look at the sky. A sliver of bird passes overhead. A real one, maybe. Too fast to see clearly. But she gasps. That was her. You squint. Maybe it was. Historians still argue whether children raised in war zones develop exaggerated imagination as defense or as adaptation, whether they dream more to survive or because they carry more than their hearts should hold. You no longer care what history decides. You just know your granddaughter sees birds where others see shadows. And maybe, just maybe, she's right. That night you don't light the candle right away. You sit in the half-dark. You let the wind speak through the cracks in the wall. You let the feathers on your back rustle against the mat. You let your granddaughter sleep beside you, one hand on her notebook, one hand open just in case a dream decides to land. And for the first time in a long while, you don't brace for the sky to fall. You wait for something to rise. The following morning, the world arrives with a knock. Not the thunder of a blast, not the shout of a neighbor, just a quiet, polite knock. A sound so out of place it might as well be from another country or another decade. You rise, startled, adjusting your shawl. Your granddaughter looks at you wide-eyed. Who knocks here, she whispers. No one, you say truthfully. No one ever knocks. You descend the stairs slowly. The knock repeats, barely louder than the breeze. It taps a third time before you reach the door. You open it just enough to peek. There, standing awkwardly in dusty sandals and a hat too big for his head, is a boy. Not a stranger exactly. You've seen him in the alley, always chasing something, soccer ball, kite, cat. He holds out a folded paper. It's for her, he says, jerking his chin toward the rooftop. The bird girl. He doesn't wait. He runs. You unfold the paper. A drawing made in child's pencil in careful strokes. A bird. Red wings, huge eyes, a gold thread tied to its ankle trailing off the edge of the paper. You bring it upstairs. She has a message, you say. Your granddaughter takes it reverently like it's a royal scroll. She found someone else, she says, examining it. She's telling us to come. You raise an eyebrow. Come where she points upward, to the clouds. Ah, you say. I didn't pack. You don't need to. Wings remember. Mainstream historical fact. During conflict in Gaza, children often relied on drawing and storytelling as a form of psychological relief. Many NGOs distributed art supplies during temporary ceasefires not just as education tools, but as emotional first aid. Some of these drawings now hang in galleries around the world, framed like dispatches from places too many have forgotten. You decide to create your own gallery. You gather the drawings she's made, the birds, the nests, the feathered shadows, and pin them to the rooftop wall using old clothespins. The concrete becomes a sky. The sky becomes a promise. She adds the new one. The paper flutters slightly in the wind. This one is different, she says. How? It's not asking us to wait anymore. It's asking us to follow. You sit beside her. It's the hottest part of the day, but you don't mind the sun. You let it warm the bones behind your shoulder blades where just maybe your wings still sleep. She sketches another image. This time it's both of you flying over the neighborhood. Houses below the sea in the distance, birds all around. It's clumsy, full of spirals and uneven lines. But you've never seen anything more beautiful. Where are we going, you ask? Where she needs us. You nod. That evening, instead of the usual candle, you light a small fire in a clay pot. The smoke curls upward like a whisper. She dances around it, wings flapping, giggling. Do you think it's real, she asks? What all of it? Amal, the message, the clouds waiting for us. You consider. Maybe it doesn't matter, you say. Why? Because you believed it. She seems satisfied with that quirky tidbit. There's a local Gaza tale of a woman who weaved invisible cloth during the war cloaks she said that could hide children from bombs. Some said she was mad. Others said the children really were saved. Either way, she sewed every day until the end. You think of her now. You pull out your needle and the last of the clean thread. You begin stitching a small pouch just large enough to hold a feather, a note, a dream. When your granddaughter falls asleep, you tuck the drawing inside it. Then you place it near her pillow, just in case she needs it for the journey. Historians still argue whether hope is a symptom or a cure. You think it's a direction. Tonight you both face east toward the places where birds are born. The wind is cooler now. You close your eyes. You think you hear wings, not flapping, but unfolding. By morning the rooftop feels different, lighter, like something once heavy has finally lifted its elbow off your chest. You don't speak of it at first. You and your granddaughter both go about the early chores in silence, brushing dust off the mat, shaking out the pillowcases, rinsing last night's dishes with water that's more precious than words. But she hums, softly, not a song you know, not one from the radio or the mosque or her school, something invented, something hers. You say nothing, just listen. Then she takes your hand and says, I think today's the day. You don't ask which day. You already know. She runs to her notebook and draws again. This time it's a door, but not just any door. This one is tall, arched, glowing faintly. A door floating in the middle of the sky. A keyhole shaped like a feather. You take a deep breath. You'll need a key, you say. I have one, she replies, pulling out the cloth pouch you stitched. See, you smile. Of course she does. Mainstream historical fact. During prolonged conflicts, Palestinian children often repurposed everyday objects into talismans, wrappers, broken combs, colored stones imbued with meanings adults might never guess. To an outsider, it might look like a bundle of trash. But to the child who carries it, it's armor. She insists on wearing the pouch like a necklace. It'll keep me safe, she declares. I believe you. You gather supplies, mostly pretend. A cloth satchel filled with things you both agree are important, a drawing, a piece of dried bread, the lid of a jam jar just in case it's a mirror, and a pebble that looks suspiciously like a bird's egg. Downstairs your neighbor calls up. She's asking if the pipe burst again. You say it did, but it's manageable. You don't mention that today might be the last rooftop. Instead you sweep and hum and wait. When the breeze picks up at noon, you both know. You each step to the edge where the drawings flutter like prayer flags. The two birds, the shadow, The sky door. She raises her arms. You do the same. You feel ridiculous and holy all at once. Quirky tidbit. There's a belief among some Gaza elders that if you raise your arms toward the Mediterranean during a wind strong enough to lift your scarf, your prayers will reach Andalusia by nightfall. No one knows where this story began or why Andalusia, but it still gets whispered on rooftops like yours. She closes her eyes, takes one step forward. You don't stop her. You step forward too. Of course you don't fly. Your feet remain on the concrete. Your bones stay ordinary. The door does not appear, but the feeling, it's undeniable. A surge, a lightness, a yes. She opens her eyes and laughs. That was it, she says. What was the lift? I felt it. You nod suddenly, blinking hard against the sun. Historians still argue whether ritual without result is delusion or devotion, whether people perform these acts for transformation or comfort. But you don't need a historian to tell you what your heart already understands. Sometimes you practice flight so that hope doesn't forget your name. You eat imaginary soup for lunch flavored with crushed mint and longing. You take turns watching the sky. You read the last letter again, the one Amal never wrote, but your granddaughter swears she received anyway. In it, Amal says the clouds are soft, that they smell like cardamom, that they play music only birds can hear, that she misses you, that she's waiting. Your granddaughter folds it carefully and tucks it inside her pouch. Tomorrow, she says, we go. You nod. And though you know full well that your feet will still touch the ground, that the roof will still be dusty, and that the city will still hum with tension, you believe her. Because what else is there really? The night comes with fewer noises than usual. No distant shouts, no blasts, just the occasional rustle of wings, real imagined. At this point, what's the difference? You awaken before her this time. The sky is still more shadow than color, that deep slate gray where morning has to work harder than usual to arrive. You listen, not for bombs or boots, but for the whisper of something else, feathers maybe, or dreams stretching out after a long sleep. You place the kettle on the broken stove even though you know there's no gas left. Ritual matters. The hiss that doesn't come still signals a beginning. Your granddaughter stirs. Is it today, she asks, not opening her eyes. It's always today, you reply. She smiles. Then I'm ready. She eats a piece of stale flatbread as if it's the finest pastry. She brushes her hair carefully, methodically, though there's no one to impress. Then she fastens the pouch you stitched close to her heart and stands by the doorway of the roof like it's an airport gate. You watch her quietly, and you remember. Mainstream historical fact. After years of blockade and bombardment, many children in Gaza have never seen the world beyond the wall. They grow up without airports, without forests, without mountains. Their geography is a narrow strip hemmed in by history and wire, but in their drawings the sky is always open. She's drawing again now. A new picture. Two people, clearly you and her, with enormous wings landing on the top of a building. Not this one. A round one. Glass walls. Gardens growing up its sides like ivy. This is where Amal lives now, she explains. She says the ceiling is made of stars. You nod as if you've always known. Then she folds the picture and hands it to you. It's your boarding pass, she says. Don't lose it. You press it to your lips and slip it into your sleeve. Around noon the wind picks up. Not the dry, scratchy kind, but something cooler, kinder. And for the first time in many days you see someone else on a rooftop across the street. Another child, also wearing wings. They wave. Your granddaughter waves back, then turns to you, eyes wide. I told you, she says. Quirky tidbit. In Palestinian oral folklore, there's a figure called al-Ri, Mother of the Wind. She carries lost children across the sky, whispering secrets into their ears and tying tiny bells to their wrists so their mothers can find them again. Some say she's real. Some say she's a story. All agree she only visits the rooftops of those who truly wait. The child across the street vanishes behind a chimney. But now there's motion everywhere. A flicker of color here, a glint of ribbon there. Something is beginning. Your granddaughter takes your hand and says, "Close your eyes." You obey. She squeezes once, twice, then whispers, "We're flying." Of course your feet remain planted. The rooftop doesn't fade. The walls don't melt into clouds, but inside your chest something rises, a lightness, a sense of leaving without having to move. And as the wind hums louder, almost melodic, you open your eyes. The drawings on the wall lift, not all the way, not like birds, but enough to dance. And in that moment it feels like the entire city is breathing with you. Historians still argue whether joy in a war zone is rebellion or delusion, whether play is a denial or a weapon, whether hope is naive or necessary. You don't argue anymore. You believe. You pull your granddaughter close, and you say something you haven't said in a long, long time. Thank you. She looks up. For what? For reminding me I still have wings. That night before bed, she tells you a story. One about a grandmother who turned into a cloud and a child who climbed into the sky to visit her only to find that the grandmother had become a whole constellation, one that whispered bedtime stories through the stars. You don't ask if she made it up. You just whisper, "Tell it again." And she does. The wind is softer now. Not gone, just gentler, as if even it understands this might be the end of something, or the beginning. But let's not rush that thought. You and your granddaughter sit quietly on the roof, not drawing, not pretending, just being. She leans against you, her head tucked neatly into the hollow of your shoulder, as though your bones were carved centuries ago for exactly this purpose. The sun is dipping low. That sleepy orange-pink glaze stretches across the buildings. On clear days, it almost makes the concrete shimmer like water. You both stay still. Neither of you wants to break the spell. Mainstream historical fact across Gaza rooftops have become more than architecture. They are spaces of survival, observation, ritual, memory. During ceasefires, families gather on them to breathe, to feel sky, to remember that the world still moves. She breaks the silence first. What happens if we don't go? You consider the question. Then we wait. Wait for what? For the next wind, the next bird, the next knock. She frowns, serious. But what if it never comes? You don't have an answer, but you offer one anyway. Then we build wings of our own. She smiles just a little. You're good at this. At what? Saying nice things that sound like truth. You chuckle. It's a grandmother's job. Quirky tidbit. In Palestinian embroidery traditions, grandmothers often stitched protective patterns, amulets of thread. They were called into their grandchildren's clothing. Tiny symbols in the hem near the heart at the edge of sleeves. They weren't spells exactly, just memories sewn into fabric. You think of the pouch you made her. You wonder if it will last. You reach into your pocket and pull out your last scrap of thread. It's frayed, nearly too short to be useful. Still, you tie it around her wrist. A blessing, you say. For what? For tomorrow, and the tomorrow after that. She doesn't ask what that means. She just rests her head again. And for a long while there is nothing to do but breathe. Below you the city exhales too. A kettle whistles. A door creaks. A call to prayer threads its way through the alleys and into the sky. It all feels softer, slower, like the world is leaning back on its elbows, sighing. Historians still argue whether memory is a burden or a balm, whether people in conflict remember too much or too little, whether forgetting might be the kindest mercy. But you think memory is a rooftop. You climb it every evening. You sit beside it every night. And no matter how loud the world becomes, no matter how thick the smoke or deep the silence, memory waits. Patiently, in drawings, in lullabies, in the quiet beat of wings you can almost but not quite hear. That night she asks for no story, only your hand, so you hold hers. You fall asleep like that. And in your dreams you see her flying, not with feathers, but with light. And in that light she carries not sorrow, not rage, but something gentler, like an offering, like peace, like a promise folded inside a child's drawing, like you, still watching the sky, still whispering her name, still waiting for wings. The rooftop fades now. The concrete softens. The sun withdraws gently behind the skyline like a child tucking in for bed. The pigeons, real or imagined, settle on distant ledges, cooing lullabies in a language only sleep understands. You sit a little longer, because it feels good to sit. No alarms, no announcements, just stillness. Your granddaughter's breath slows, syncing with the rhythm of nightfall. The pouch on her chest rises and falls like a tiny heartbeat, steady and brave. You touch it lightly just to remind yourself that hope, even when quiet, still pulses. The wind has stopped, but the air holds its memory. You breathe in. There's the faintest scent of jasmine, of soot, of pencil shavings and warm bread and something like sky. You pull your shawl closer, not out of cold, just to feel the weight of something familiar. Below the city settles, the doors close, the lights dim, the stories, so many stories, wrap around their tellers and slip into dreams. And you stay, for one more moment, because it's yours, and it's enough. So rest now. You've watched, you've waited, you've remembered. And when morning comes, if you hear a knock, don't be afraid. Just answer it, with wings.